All right, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I am jacked up about today. I have a young man on the show who has one hell of a wrestling career at Rutgers University. Jersey guy, Clearview High School, South Jersey. High school All-American. Wait do you hear this guy's accolades? High school All-American, 2016, 37 and 1 record, which is almost perfect. Two time, came in second in state championship, two-time regional champ, goes on to Rutgers, three-time NCAA qualifier. And I just learned not too long ago how hard it is to qualify for that tournament. There's tons of wrestlers out there that just never see it. And this guy was there three times. Big Ten bronze medalist, three-time Big Ten place winner, four-time academic All Big Ten, two-time academic All-American. That's what I love to hear about these athletes who go on to do big time things in their sport as well as in the classroom, and goes on to get his master's degree, which is probably unheard of in the old days, but now in today's world, a lot of athletes are going for their fifth year and they're extending their play, which is great. But he is currently the creative director at ClickFunnels, right? Which is run by the one and only Russell Brunson, which that name everybody knows. But also, Mike is heavily involved in a family business that's extremely successful in South Jersey. The Vanbrill pools and spas, want to put the plug in there for it, right? And anybody who needs a pool in South Jersey, these are high-end, sophisticated, beautiful pools that I've seen them. They're incredible. Go check them out. But welcome to the show, Mike Vanbrill.
Hey man, thank you so much for that awesome interview, and I hope to live up to the hype of the interview, man. I really appreciate it, Jeff. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, man, we've gone back a little bit, so it's good to connect again and hop on the show.
Yeah, well, listen, before I pepper you with a bunch of questions here I have, why don't you just tell the audience just a little bit about yourself and the world you've been living out there in Boise, Idaho?
Yeah, so I mean, so to get from here, there was quite a bit of a journey, but essentially, I was born and raised into a family of wrestlers. All of my uncles and my father basically were wrestlers, and they were, good wrestlers in New Jersey. And I didn't necessarily love wrestling growing up as a kid. I actually really despised it, but my dad wouldn't let me play any other sports, really. So I played a lot of sports like hockey, baseball, all of the sports. But later down the line around middle school, I had to decide, what I was going to do in college, and if I was really going to take a sport seriously. So I, was a really, serious, basically starting into middle school, getting serious into wrestling, which brought me to high school. And I started off my high school career struggling. I remember, losing, to a lot of names that weren't really big. And, so that really carried on really through freshman and even sophomore year, where freshman year I didn't make it to states. And sophomore year, I made it to states finally and went 0-2. And, that's not even close, and, as you're getting into your sophomore to junior year, you really need to start placing in the state tournament in order to even think about wrestling Division 1. So I remember my dad looking at me after, another 0-2 year at states. And he said, Mike, I, if you, really want to do something great in your life, you're going to have to make some, serious decisions. And he had a plan for me, and one plan was to fly me across the country, go to a military style boot camp in the middle of the summer in Minnesota. It's called J. Robinson Camp. And essentially, what I'd spent my summer of high school doing was, training. We had about 5 workouts a day. We'd wake up at 12 o'clock at night and we'd go run the streets. And then we'd be right up in the morning again for, making sure that our homework was done, our shoes were tied, our belt was buckled. It was like a military style boot camp, mixed with wrestling, hard training. So it was easily the hardest thing that I ever had to do. And towards the end of that basically camp, in order to get the I Did It shirt, my dad bribed me with a little bit of money. Was like, hey, if you come back with the I Did It shirt, then I'll give you $500. And I, at the time, was
Okay,
ecstatic. I was like, oh my
we'll take
God.
that.
Yeah, so we'll take that, right? So, I was determined to do it. And long story short, the last day, you have to run 15 miles under a certain
Hmm.
amount of time. And I had never ran anything like that, but so I basically got it done, got the 15 miles, and I got the I Did It shirt. And that basically was the first time that I finally was like, okay, I can trust myself with being able to follow through with something. And that's, I
Yeah.
think, the basis of being able to become successful in anything you want is being able to like trust yourself with the things that you need to do. So essentially, I went on a tear. After that, I came back and I took fifth in the state. And my only loss was to the number five ranked kid in the country. And then my senior year, I was 37-0 until the state finals, pretty much, dominated everybody until the state finals. And, I was winning until the last 15 seconds and, got ankle picked. And that kid was ranked number one in the country. His name is Shane Griffith. He went on to actually win two NCAA titles, and then he went on to save the Stanford wrestling program because they were about to cut the wrestling program.
Yeah.
And he went on to save the Stanford wrestling program. And I look back on that and I'm like, wow, that was my only loss in my high school senior year. So that can be something that I can look back and be proud on. But
Oh, yeah.
um, that loss was something that propelled me to be like, okay, I want to go Division 1 and I want to continue to work hard because I wasn't satisfied. And a lot of
Yeah.
people in life they'll go the opposite way, right? When you take a big loss, you can either take that energy and and like frown upon it and not use it as energy to continue to
Yeah.
go forward, or you can use it to propel yourself. And I really did. I went on a binge. I was 7 days a week in the gym, until college, my freshman year. I redshirted. Anthony Ashnault was the 141 pounder.
Yeah.
I took a great, redshirt year, won a couple tournaments. Sophomore year, I, started, and that's kind of how everything happened until college, not to continue on that, but I think just to wrap up of the journey, but essentially like, you know, it all started from the losses in high school that propelled me to college. And I'll say another thing is like even through those years of college, there were so many times where I didn't think I was going to be the starter. I had to fight for my spot. There was,
Yeah.
every single year, all the way till senior year, that basically took so many losses, which I feel made my career better.
Well, Mike, I got to back up on you a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you make it sound so easy to qualify for the state tournament. Yeah, yeah, I didn't get there my freshman year. Well, how many do? I mean, you got to win the districts, you got to win the regions to get there, or come in like first, second, or third, right?
Yep.
So just getting there is difficult. And then as a freshman, how many freshmen win anything? Right? So either I know every now and then you get this freak of nature who goes in there and cleans it up, and as a freshman, he goes all the way through high school and whatever. There's how many of them? And then you make it sound so easy to get to the NCAA tournament. Man, that is freaking hard as hell. I mean, how many wrestlers are at your weight class in the country that have to, wrestle through and have certain records in tournaments? And then how many actually make it to the tournament? It's not that many.
Yeah. Couple hundred
So
out of the tens of thousands of people that compete.
right. And you're like, well, I didn't get there. It's disappointing. How many guys would just die just to be there? You know what I mean? I mean, your accolades, maybe you don't have the gold medal, okay, but what you accomplished getting there is incredible.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
think the story that I want to get into eventually throughout this is I believe is probably one of my favorites to tell because it gets a little extreme at moments, and some of the moments I'm not really even proud of, but I'm at the point in my career where um I don't look back and I'm upset
Yeah.
about anything.
Yeah.
So I'd definitely be
Well, I got a bunch of questions to ask you, but if you want to get into that right now, we can go deep right now.
yeah,
Or you
I
want to,
mean,
or do you want to buid up to it?
yeah, build up to it because
Okay.
I think yeah.
All right. So let's go backwards. I love to ask this question. You've been out of college now how long?
A little under 3 years now.
So not that long, right?
No.
But if you go back to your high school days, right, the recruiting process from then till now is completely different,
Yeah.
right? It's and I had the pleasure and the honor to interview Scott Goodell, your coach, who was phenomenal, and good coach, great program. But what was your recruiting process like coming out of high school? You were 37-1. I mean, people had to be banging on your door. How did you end up going to Rutgers? Why, what was the decision factor to go there? And did it end up becoming what you really wanted?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple little nuances there. One is that you'd be surprised, right? That you would think that there'd be so many colleges knocking at my door. And I'm not saying there wasn't a decent amount, um, but it's another conversation that I'd like to bring up, especially with younger athletes now who, want to get seen and get recruited by colleges. I wasn't a blue chip recruit, right? I wasn't someone coming out getting recruited by all the best people. There was Rutgers, there was Princeton, there was Navy, and there was, some other, schools that I wasn't even considering. So no, there wasn't a ton of schools actually recruiting me.
So
And
but Mike, why do you think that is? You come in second in the state, like that's like the pinnacle of everything. And Jersey wrestling is one of the best states in the country, right?
I think probably because yeah, no, 100%. I think, well, the recruiting process started, I think in my junior year, I committed to Rutgers. So luckily my brother actually went to Rutgers too. So he paved the way with the relationship of the coaches. So they recruited him, and I kind of knew after that happened that I really did want to stay closer to home and I wanted to potentially go to Rutgers. So that was a big thing in mind, was like I didn't know if I really wanted to go across the country or to, some other school. So pretty early on, I knew I wanted to go to Rutgers.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a good question. It's like, you take fifth in the state, right? That puts you on the map,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't necessarily put you in front of, the top 10 schools.
Yeah.
I'd say second in the state, and then you're 37-1. I'd say that's probably more of where you're starting to. But most people, like, the recruiting process starts like when you're a junior. So if
Yeah.
you're not doing stuff your junior year, then you're really, you're gonna get recruited late into your senior year, maybe, which is fine. But that's kind of how the process started for me. And
Okay.
yeah,
All right. So what was it like walking on campus, goodies recruiting you? You're in a huge wrestling program in the country, right? Rutgers is one of the top wrestling programs. Walk me through your fight to get on the mat.
yeah. So it's funny, I got there my freshman year, and I just thought that, with the dedication, the amount of lifting that I was doing, the talent that I had on the mat, that I would be able to kind of walk in there and be able to handle anybody. But within the first few months, I really understood that there was a whole different level to the game, especially with, top and bottom. I was struggling to be able to get out from underneath people, especially, older people like, Ken Theobald, or, some of the older, junior and senior guys. But me as a freshman, I wanted to be the starter. I knew that they wanted to redshirt me, to, basically hold my potential, continue to grow, and then have me wrestle into the next year. But I had the number one ranked wrestler in the country in my weight class at the time, which was Anthony Ashnault.
Yeah.
He had actually won the NCAAs that year. And, it's crazy because in my mind, was like, no, I don't care how good he is. Like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try and start over him.
Now he
Uh,
transferred in, right? Or no?
no, he was actually early on. He
Was
came
it
straight
okay?
to Rutgers, but he was one of the bigger names that first came
Yep.
to Rutgers, and he paved the way for sure. I have a ton of respect for Anthony, and actually we're still close today.
Yep.
But when you're on the mat in competition and the spots on the line, things just don't really, you still got to fight your way. So
Oh yeah.
I remember one day we would have Friday wrestle offs. Essentially, Friday morning we would run stadiums. We'd go to the, football stadium, and we'd do this insanely grueling workout where we would go to the top of the, steps of the top all the way
Yep.
down. We'd
Yep.
race each other. I'm going to be a huge competition, and then we'd hurry up. We'd go to class, and then we'd hurry up. I'd hurry up and try and take a nap, and then at 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, we'd go ahead and do match days. And those are the times where, you're not wrestling each other off, but the coaches are watching. So essentially, if you're not winning, those wrestle offs on Friday, then, it's kind of a big deal. So I remember fighting, man, like just, fighting teeth and grinder on Ashnault. He's the number one recruit, or number one ranked wrestler in the country.
Yeah.
And I had lost by a point
Oh,
against him. And man, like, I was upset, but everyone around me was like, man, you're a stud, like all this stuff. And I was just upset. And I remember Goody being like, one of my favorite moments ever actually was when he looked at me after that, round, and was like, he goes, look at him right there. He's a freshman and he's wrestling like a dog on a bone. And like, that's how he described my wrestling,
yeah.
just like go, go, go. And that's kind of how I got started. That year they actually decided to redshirt me. So I had a pretty good wrestling start. I won a couple redshirt tournaments, and that kind of really started my fight,
Yeah.
on to the starting spots essentially. But
Now, how did you handle that when Goody said, "Look, we're gonna redshirt you this year"? Were you okay with that, or was it like, man, I want to get out there now?
I think that I knew that if I wasn't soundly beating him, that I would be okay with redshirting. But I knew in my mind that I wanted to. It actually was kind of easier, and I'll go through this pressure slash flow state mentality that I've
Yeah,
been able to develop over wrestling. But essentially, like, I didn't really have anything to lose as a redshirt freshman because I knew I was going to redshirt if I didn't win. So it allowed me to compete more freely and allow me to just go after it without having any like tense
yeah. No
pressure.
anxiety.
Correct. So no, I wasn't very upset, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But I knew that I wanted to beat him, but I knew in my head if I wasn't fully beating him, you know, over and over again, then no, I'll just redshirt and get better, and then I have 4 years of
Yeah.
wear and tear ready to go. So
Now, could you have gone down in class or up, or if you
um
wanted to wrestle?
so not really. My so 149 was Richie Lewis. He was actually top 10, 15 in the country at the time. And then 157 was my brother. So I would have and jumping two weight classes is
That's big.
it's pretty big. I actually did it, and I'll get into that story. But essentially, yeah, I was okay in my freshman year to redshirt. I wanted to wrestle, I wanted to do the thing, but I was okay with getting another training year and developing, and it
Yeah.
actually I think worked out to my advantage.
So you mentioned your brother, right? How was that having your brother on the same team with you at that time?
Yeah. So it was good. It was awesome. I mean, me and my brother were practice partners. We were roommates. We grew up in the same room together. Basically, we grew up on the same team together. We went to the same crazy camp together. We did everything together. And I think it was important. It was cool. We could push each other. We're very competitive people.
Yeah.
So it's not like all sunshine and rainbows, like, oh, we love
Yeah.
each other. No, it's competitive. We want to
Yeah.
start. We want to like do better than each other. And I
Yeah.
think that competition allowed both of us to continue to strive to be better people on the team.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was actually really good for both of us.
Now he's a year ahead of you or 2 years?
He was 2 years ahead of me.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. And he's in the family business, right?
correct. Yep,
You
yep.
know,
He's
so you
running.
guys are in the family business together. You're doing all kinds of you wrestle together. You live together. I mean, it had to be great. Even though it's competitive,
Yeah,
you're probably killing each other along the way.
yeah.
But would you rather do it with somebody else?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. And I think that, as I get later into my life, I want to continue to keep family like close. And it's
Yeah.
hard because there's so much with business and money and,
Oh yeah.
comparison. And everyone's comparing each other to everybody nowadays,
Right.
especially on social media, that, sometimes we got to figure out a way to let that stuff go.
Yep.
And and me and him are still working on that today. We're close. He came out and visited me in Boise. But there's always, competition, all these things. But at the end of the day, we're family. We love each other
Yeah.
and we got each other's back. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's it. That's what it's all about. You
yeah,
know. So we mentioned the weight class. Now you've wrestled different weight classes, right?
yeah,
Talk about that and the other wrestlers I've interviewed. I don't, and you and I have talked about this years ago when we met the first time. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you lose all that weight. You got to go to school. You got to pay attention in class. You got to have a life. You literally walk around all year long hungry.
yeah.
How do you manage that and then go out there and kick butt on the mat?
Well, to be honest with you, this is actually, I'd say, this isn't a cocky statement. I believe I am the most experienced weight cutter, and not even in a good way. Like, I'm one of the most experienced weight cutters in regards to cutting weight, wrestling, like, in the whole country. I got called into some weight classes, right, where I had to decide, am I going to go up a weight class and, try and start and do all this stuff, or am I going to go down a weight class, and definitely start, be strong for my weight. So essentially what happened was I came into college, as a redshirt, around 165. And then when I got into like redshirt freshman year and redshirt sophomore year, I started to gain a little bit of weight. So I was like around 170-ish, 175 max. and I was cutting down to 141. So that's about,
How do you do
26,
that?
26 pounds.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there was 3 years of which I had to do that. And all 3 years I tried different things. You know, essentially what I did was I tried different diets, and I learned a ton about nutrition in that time frame. But essentially what I learned about, combat sports and cutting weight is a little bit different than like cutting weight for health reasons.
Yeah.
So I'd say about, 10 to 15 pounds, I'd say, 8 to 10 pounds of that is just stringing a rag like the water's coming out. That's what you're doing to your muscles. You're just stringing out the water. So there's a certain point that you have to reach to hit that like critical mass point of, you know, I'm not going to be cutting out any more muscle or fat or anything. I'm just
But how do
going
you how do
to,
you do that, Mike? How do you wring that water out of you? What do you do?
you work out with, you work out really hard and then you don't fill the water back up. But that's not so essentially what I would say is for someone to get anywhere from 8 to 10 pounds within striking distance of their weight, and that's when you start to worry about water retention. You don't want to cut out your water until about 48 hours before your weigh-ins. So like
Okay.
I could be 8 to 10 pounds over 48 hours beforehand, right? Which
And
is
wring
kind
the
of,
water out.
and then wring the water out. But a lot of people will, cut the water out too early, and that's one big mistake that I made throughout my career. But essentially, what I found out about nutrition and the type of food you eat, is that it all affects the amount of hydration and water content that's in your body and your muscles and your cells. So the more that someone, a wrestler, could, stay on a whole foods diet, and as well as a high water diet, until they get close to weigh-ins, will allow them to hold more water cellularly, and they also won't dehydrate themselves, because the minute you eat chips, the minute you eat granola, the minute you eat any cooked foods, not to say they're totally bad, but you will actually put in food that is dehydrating by nature. So your body will take the water from your muscles and your tissues and your organs, and it'll go down and it'll help digest the dehydrated foods that you just ate. Even like a granola candy bar, there's no water, it's
Yeah.
fully dehydrated. So, later, as I got more advanced into my weight cuts, I found that, man, eating a 300 or 200 calorie granola bar isn't, sure, it could be relatively, it has some protein, or even protein bars say, yeah, it can be relatively healthy. But the problem is that it's going to take about a pound or so of water. So you're going to be super dehydrated. So I'd rather go ahead and eat, 2 oranges, that gives me a ton of water and hydration.
Yeah.
Um, versus, those other foods. So I just had to balance myself. Essentially, what I would like to tell any wrestler who's doing it is to go to a whole foods diet where you're eating more fruits, meat after hard workouts, and you're going to be eating little snacked meals, about 4 to 5 of them throughout the day, versus eating one huge meal, because your stomach will expand.
Yeah.
So you got to keep your stomach actually kind of relatively small. And I'd say, like, yeah, I struggled for years with trying to figure out how can I, wrestle, compete, do school, everything, while cutting 25 to 30 pounds. And a lot of the times, I believe that it messed up my career a lot because I cut too much weight. And that's where it is about finding the true weight class for you. I
Yeah.
jumped from 141 for 3 years, because I wrestled six in college. So 3 years at 141, it was my incorrect weight class for about 2 years. I just made it happen because I needed to for the team to start to do all those
Yeah.
things. And then I bumped up to 157, and the reason for that was because, you know I could have went 149, but I hit about 185 pounds after 141. So I was 141.
185? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I was 141. I wrestled at the Big Tens at 141. 2 weeks later, I hopped on the scale and I was 183.5 pounds. And
In 2 weeks, how did that happen? What the heck are you eating? An elephant?
everything that was in front of me. I stopped working out. I was kind of like a little low in my life because I made it to the Big Tens, and which didn't allow me to make it to nationals. That was earlier in my career. And that whole journey put me into the hospital, actually. And I was like, because when you do that to your body, when you're going from 141 to 180, your blood pressure spikes, your
Yeah.
body doesn't
Everything.
know what's going on. So literally I was in the hospital with, like, monitors on my chest, everything. And I was like, yo, this is crazy. I am never doing this again. So I went vegan overnight. I did like a year and a half fully vegan. 6 months of that was actually only eating fruit, because this was in the off season. So I was trying all these different things, but I literally for 6 months only ate fruits and vegetables. So no meat,
Mm.
no cheese, no dairy,
So what
no.
did that do to your insides? Were you like
Oh man, it was the best
crazy?
one of the best experiences of my life. Um,
Really?
oh man, like I'd recommend anybody to try and at least do that, especially in the summertime when you're not working out a crazy hard or you don't have too many responsibilities to try and cleanse your gut because I believe most Americans are eating 3 to 5 meals a day. It's not digesting and it just sits there. That's why people get these big stomachs. They're,
Yeah.
all these different problems.
So
And it's
just
like
fruit. You're saying just eat fruits. That's it.
I wouldn't tell you to do fruit for 6 months, but I would tell you if you went on a fruit diet for about 10 to 12 days, it would fix a lot of problems in people's lives right now.
What kind of fruits?
Any fruits. The higher water contents, the higher citrus it is, the higher cleansing it is. So
Okay.
it'll help you with, moving your lymphatic fluids and cleaning
Yeah.
out the gut and all these like amazing
I'm
things.
going on a fruit diet, you know,
Oh man.
because the older
Yeah.
you get, man, it gets hard. It's hard to keep it off.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, you're a young guy. You're, still in your 20s. Try and be my age and trying to keep the weight off.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
It's almost as hard as cutting weight and trying to do school and wrestling.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. So Rutgers, you're there, a number, you got your master's degree. Like you said, you're there 6 years, right?
Yeah.
This is a tough question to answer for a lot of people. And the longer you're there, the harder it is to answer. I'm going to guess. But
Yeah.
can you pinpoint a moment in time at Rutgers where you're like, this was my favorite moment?
Oh, 100%. And this is where I was going to talk to you about like my favorite story of them all.
Okay.
And there's a point where, maybe I'm not proud of some of the things that I did, but essentially what happened was, I was a 141 pounder. I wrestled there for 3 years. And on my third year, essentially 3/4 of the way through, I had to give up my spot to a guy that I beat in the wrestle offs. Because essentially I couldn't make weight anymore. I could not find a way to get down to 141 pounds anymore. It just wasn't working. Like I was literally getting sick. So essentially March came around, or no, it was a little bit before that. I gave up my spot, and um, that summer, I decided to, get real big. The next year, I went up to 157 pounds, which was my redshirt junior year. And so essentially what happened was I, wrestled a decent year at 157 pounds. I was ranked in the country like 20th or something like that, nothing crazy. And I basically with my career on the line, my bachelor's degree was getting done that year. And, so for me to come back, I would have had to either get a master's degree and I found a loophole later, essentially. But essentially what happened was, you know, I wrestled at the Big Ten tournament at 157 pounds and I took, I took sixth in the Big Tens. And they were only taking five out of the, out of the out of the people in the Big Ten. So
To
I
go
got
to
a
the NCAA,
correct.
right?
So I got an automatic qualifier. I got a bid to the NCAA tournament because of my ranking and the amount of wins that I had. So that was the first time I ever qualified for nationals. I did all that cutting weight, right? All that dedication. I never
Yeah.
qualified, and then boom, I bump up to 157.
How did you feel at that weight? Did you feel better? Did you feel stronger and a
Yeah.
better wrestler?
I felt like a better wrestler for me, but however, I was wrestling bigger people.
A
There
big
was
dude. And these guys are coming down 20 pounds.
Yeah, they're coming down from 180, and
Yeah.
it wasn't my weight. It wasn't, I was undersized, but I was making it work.
Yep.
And yeah, I qualified for nationals. And essentially what happened was 3 days before nationals, we got a call while we were at practice that, the NCAA will be canceled for the first time in like history because of COVID.
COVID.
So the first time I ever qualified for nationals, I worked 18 years of my life for this
Yeah.
goal of getting to nationals, right? Doing all this stuff, all this hard work. I finally make it, and they cancel it.
Ugh.
And it was so devastating for me. I could not even believe that, I was almost like thinking like, how is this real? How can someone dedicate, they go on this mission, go through the school system, through the
Yeah.
sports system, they dedicate their life, they go through this goal and then it can just get canceled. And it's, so out of your control. And I was questioning everything. I was like, what was this for? Why am I doing this? And like,
Yeah.
everything in my life was pretty much questioned at that point. So even worse, what happened was, and so much respect for the Rutgers people. I said in the beginning that I have no bad blood with anybody, but essentially what happened was since yes, I did qualify, but it wasn't enough for them to be like, hey, we want to, renew your scholarship and have you come back on the same amount of money that we had you for the last 4 years. So I didn't hear from them. So I reached out and I was like, guys, what's going on? Like, am I coming back? Am I whatever? And he's like, hey, we have so many recruits coming in and, we don't really have a ton of money allocated for you and all this stuff. And I was like, holy crap. Like, this just went so south so
Yeah.
fast. Um, so, essentially what happened was, I didn't know what I was going to do. And I went back to the family business, found myself plumbing pools, digging, running excavators, construction, hardcore, for about 4 months. It was after the March, right? It was like April, May,
Yep.
June, right? And then I was like, guys, I don't know if this is fully meant for me right now. I also don't, I had 1 year of eligibility left and I didn't know if I wanted to take it. My dad was like, hey, Mikey, you could just let that go and just, just start making money, just hop into the business,
Yeah.
why?
It was a big business to hop into too. That was a
Oh,
tough thing to walk away from.
100%. So he was like, go ahead and, you know, do that or, whatever. So essentially, the part that I getting to that I wasn't necessarily so proud of was I decided to let everything go. I stopped working. I stopped everything essentially my whole life. And I decided to travel around the country in my truck, just going nomad style. I wanted to just get rid of everything, the pressure of the school, the pressure of business, the pressure of everything. And I took up a new sport. I started cliff diving. And pretty shortly, within 4 months, I found myself chasing a goal of wanting to jump off a 100-foot cliff. And there was parts of me that was just wanting to adventure, be in nature, just like not worry about the world. And that's
Yeah.
really where it stemmed from. So a couple months in, it's about September, right? And let alone just to let you know, so COVID canceled the tournament the year before.
Yep.
So the season started late that next year. It started in January. So it was like September, October time. And I'm sitting here with some of the best cliff divers in the US, some sponsored by Nitro Circus, some sponsored by Red Bull. I found myself in a community of cliff divers that aren't just like jumping off for fun. They're diving for
Yeah.
competitive.
They're making money.
They're sponsored. They're doing all these
Yeah.
things. So essentially I was working my way up and one day, late September fall day, I was with that crew and I was jumping and for me I was pretty well rounded. I was jumping 70 to 80-foot cliffs very easily, backflipping, pretty easily. And my friend looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Mike, do you want to set a world record today?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to set a world record. What are you thinking?" And he looks at me, he goes like, "Right there." And he looks up to the mountain, and essentially it's a quarry in Pennsylvania, and it's 107 feet. Okay, 107, and it's just a slate wall that goes straight down. And me and him I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we went on the top of the cliff. I put my back to the 100-foot drop, and he looks at me. He goes, "You ready?" And I said, "I'm ready to go, man. Like I'm ready." And so start the countdown: three, two, one. And he jumps. I jump at the same time. He does a gainer, which is a running backflip, and I do a regular backflip. And essentially, I hit the water around like 75, 80 miles an hour, and I landed, perfectly. And essentially I walked out unscathed, right? We iced a world record. It was the largest jump that two people jumped off a cliff at one time. And so yeah, we set a world record and
That's
uh,
sick.
yeah, it was an
Why isn't
awesome
that on ESPN?
it's all over my Instagram, but it should be. And you know, it's funny because not too long after I found myself back there, I said I would never do that again. I felt the impact of the water and I was
How
like,
did
that
that
was
feel?
it was insane. Like like I was so strong. I was deadlifting probably about 450 to 500 pounds
Right?
at the time, lifting, very strong. And it just took my legs, spread them out. Like, luckily I had enough strength, but there was a 17-year-old that jumped before me. He landed fine, perfectly, blew out his whole knee. It was a year and a half recovery, LCL,
Oh,
MCL, meniscus, all gone, gone,
oh,
just from the impact. Um, but there was a moment about not too short after where the Red Bull guy, he lines up on the cliff. He puts a trampoline, like a mini tramp on top
Yep.
of a off of a 90-foot cliff. And he says, "Hey Mike, can you go down there and spot me?" And I said, "Yeah, no problem." So he goes, he jumps, he wisps six spins in the air. It's a world record. It's called a quint or something. I have no idea. And essentially he lands pretty much fine. I thought it was fine. And I'm sitting there waiting for him to come up. I'm swimming, waiting for him. Bubbles are coming up. I can't see him. I look down and he's like 8 feet down the water, sinking like a rock with his hands above his head, totally knocked out. And wrestler instincts in me. I just like took a huge deep breath, dove down, and by the time I got to him, I'd say he's anywhere from 10 to 15 feet down. So essentially, I was in good shape, had really good breath work, and I think that's one of the reasons why I saved him that day. But grabbed his fingers, took him all the way up, and
How do you pull him up in the water like that? He's got to weigh like a ton.
it was rough because all the water's out of his lungs. So because what happens is when you impact, all the water gets hit out, so you sink like a rock. The quarry was 500 feet deep, and so his body would have been gone. And yeah, I start pulling him up, just like I got him by his fingertip. Start, pulling him up, swimming up, and I throw him over my shoulder. He isn't breathing. He's got blood coming out of his mouth.
Oh my God.
And within, 10, 15 seconds, he starts seizing up in my arms. And
Ugh.
I'm like shaking him. I'm like, wake up, wake up. And I found a little ledge that I could hold on to because it was about a half a mile swim out of the quarry. So I just held him there in my arms until he started to breathe again. He like coughed up a ton of water and started breathing. I thought he was dead. Um, and I sat there for an hour and a half. He was unconscious, didn't know what happened, kept saying the same words over and over again because his oxygen wasn't there. But yeah, I saved a life that day. And I looked at
Well,
myself in the mirror that night and I said, um, I'm never doing this again. I'm out of this
yeah.
forever. And the next morning, crazy enough, Goody texts me. He goes, "Hey, how you doing, man? You want to come back?" And I was just like, man, like, was that a text from God? Like, I don't even
Yeah.
know. And so he texted me, he says, Do you want to come back? And I was like, yeah, but like I don't listen, throwing 25, 30 grand on a master's right now is like kind of crazy. I don't even know if I could do that right now. I don't know if it's my best interest. And long story short, we found a way for me to register with the school to go for a minor with that year. Um, so yeah, he goes, "Do you want to come back?" I said, "Yes, 100%." And within 2 days, it was a Friday. He goes, "All right, come in on Friday." Fridays meant match day. Okay. So I wasn't training. I had no wrestling. I wasn't wrestling for 6 months. I was just cliff jumping, literally not even working out.
Yeah.
And on Friday, he goes, "Hey, um, let's do it." So he throws me in a wrestle off against the guy, the 149 pounder. His name is Gerard Angelo. He was a state champion for New Jersey, and he was a
Yeah.
really really good wrestler. He placed in the Big Ten, and essentially I took him out with no training. And essentially that year, I took over the spot. A week later, I beat the number 10 ranked kid in the country, which then gives me a spot to be able to compete at the Big Tens. And that was the year I go to the Big Tens. I lose my first match against the 12th seed. I lose against the 12th seed, right? So I drop to the Wrestlebacks. I'm 0-1. And if I lose, I know that I'm no longer, I'm definitely not coming back, right? That's my career essentially.
Yep.
So I lose, I go to the Wrestlebacks against in the blood round against the number 2 seed from Iowa. His name is Max Murin. He was the number 2 ranked kid in the country. And long story short, he I pulled out the biggest win of my life. I I win, I beat the number 2 seed, and after that, I go on to beat the number 2, 3, 4, and 5 seeds all in a row to place third at the
Wow.
Big Ten.
Holy crap.
So
So that's the moment. I mean,
that's
that's
that's the
one hell
moment.
of a lead up, you know? I mean, you go from, putting your life on the line, jumping off cliffs to saving people's lives to getting a text out of nowhere to showing up untrained and you win your way through it.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's probably honestly one of my favorite journeys that I ever went on in my life because of how bad things could have went or how things, could have easily just went the other way.
Yeah.
And I never would have went and got that. Honestly, that achievement still today is the achievement that I can look back on in my career and be like, you know what? All of that work was worth it because of that moment. Because of that moment. And that's what I tell, young people, young competitors, or even people in business like trying to get into the world. It's like you never know when your time is coming.
Yeah.
So, it's really about enduring. Like how long can you endure the struggle, the setbacks, until, a higher power, whoever is, giving you the life that you're giving,
Yeah.
when is it your time to come? And are you ready for that time?
Yeah.
You know?
You just never know, right?
Yeah.
So what advice can you give to the high school kids who are coming into the college wrestling world now? I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
What can you tell them to be prepared for day one?
Well, I would say that, be so scared that you're gonna fail that it that you can't let yourself fail. So the fear of failure is the driving force that's going to allow you to continue to show up. Sometimes the fear of failure feels like the wrong feeling at the time because you're like, oh, it's, I'm scared to lose, I'm scared to fail, I'm scared for my grades to slip. I got a 4.0 GPA my freshman year because I was so scared
Right?
to fail. I was so scared that, oh, what if my grades slip and I can't wrestle, you know? Um, so those are the I want to get into the helping or people get into college, but I did want to say one thing that was on my mind was what I learned from that main experience was the art of surrendering, right? So when I jumped off that 100-foot cliff, when I it wasn't the cliff jump that really made anything different in my life. It was more so the art of allowing yourself to flow and surrender to the moment. And I think that's what happened when I took third at the Big Ten was I knew that my career was done if I didn't win. And it wasn't like a pressure of, man, I got to win because my career's on the line. It was more like, man, you know what? I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful. This could be my last college match ever, man. Mikey, you know what? You did a good job, man. You've been along for the ride and, you've done so much on this and, this could be your last moment. So just go
Yeah.
out, wrestle, have fun, and surrender to the moment. And that's one of the big things is like how can you teach a young kid coming out of high school to surrender to the moment, right? It's one of the
Yeah.
hardest things to do in sports and in life, right? How can
Yeah.
you teach that? And I think that's one of the main principles that I would tell them is like, how can you show up day one, at college or, at school and, you know, have fear because you're not because I see a lot of problem with a lot of people that come into college, right? They have no fear. They
Yeah.
just are, out there partying, living free, doing all these, going out, having no
Yeah.
fear of anything. And a lot of those guys actually at the time were better wrestlers than me, right? But they didn't have better careers than me. So you'll see a lot of the times the people that you once thought were ahead of you that are just better than you, they might just have more technique or talent than you. If you stay long enough, you'll lap them and you'll start to look at
Yeah.
them differently.
Oh yeah. So do you think the younger kids are just not mature enough to understand that?
Yeah, I think, you know, and you could talk too, because you're like, you're very ahead. You have a lot of, wisdom as, in business and in life. You've just been around to see so much more than even I have, right? Um, so I think there's, timing there where like, yes, you do just have to go through a lot of experience in life to be able to I don't know, feel like your understanding of like your surroundings. Um, but yeah, I think, a lot of the times, a lot of people, if you can find a way to you know, continue to like find a way to separate yourself even from your teammates, right? A lot of the times your teammates, your classmates, they'll find a way to try and drag you down, whether it be, going out on the weekends, whether it be telling you the diet or the extra
Yeah.
training that you're doing is, not worth it, or you're trying to be a coach's pet, or you're trying to do all these things. But in the end, those moments where you continue to, show up, do the extra workouts, be a good team leader and not cause problems. right? Are you causing problems with your teammates? I've seen so many people come in with tons of talent, tons of just, oh my God, like athletic ability, way more than I had, right? But they could not keep their life straight, right?
Yeah.
They're getting in toxic relationships. They're getting in, fights. Their grades are slipping, they're doing drugs. They're, you know what I mean? Their life just isn't in order. And like,
Right.
I always thought that, part of me in college, I almost thought for a little while that it didn't matter as much as I thought. I was like, these guys are going to get by because, the raw talent and skill set. It doesn't matter that they're out, partying or whatever, because they're doing good. In the end,
Yeah.
I will tell you that it will come to bite them, right? And you
Comes
never
back to
know when
haunt
it's
you.
going to come. You,
Yeah.
you really don't. So you can't compare yourself to anybody else. That's another
Yeah.
reason.
I mean, you mentioned before, Mike, wrestling's a warrior sport, right? And I'm just guessing, listening to what you're telling me, talking about, is that warrior mentality sometimes great creates great discipline, or says, I can do it because I'm a warrior. I don't need that.
Yeah.
And what you just talked about is those kids who have the great talent, but their mindset, they're like, I don't need that. I'm a warrior. I can fight through anything. And they don't realize that, like you said, it comes back to haunt you or hurt you down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen so many people that were way more talented than me, just, had a lot more like skill set on the mat. And, you know, for so long I thought, oh, when's it going to pay off for me? When is the work that I was putting in that they weren't going to pay off, right? And I
Yeah,
didn't know when it was going to pay off, and it did pay off for me in one day throughout my career made all of it worth it. So
yeah,
when is it going to pay off for you, right? It may not be until the very last second. And are you willing to continue to do the right things all the way through until the very end to be able to get what you want? I mean, that's the real question, right? It's like,
yeah,
how long are you willing to, go through the struggle of doing things right? Because it's not easy.
yeah.
I mean,
No.
what's easier? Going out on the weekends with your
Oh,
friends,
yeah.
going and
It's easy to
partying.
fail, isn't it? It's easy to fail.
Yeah.
It's easy to be a loser, right? But yeah, I talk about, hey, how are you going to invest your time? People talk about, hey, what are you going to sacrifice? I look at it as an investment. You're going to invest the time. You're not going to sacrifice. You want to return on that time. Do the right thing,
Yeah.
right? Makes sense? So
Yeah.
who's the funnest, I don't know if that is even a word, funnest, the wrestler you ever wrestled? Like, who is the guy you just enjoyed wrestling?
Like competitor wise,
Yeah.
um, man, that's a good question. I think,
Because you've wrestled some massive names out there.
yeah. Man, the problem is I've had a lot of great, like, there were some really top dogs, top, one, two, three ranked kid in the country that, I enjoyed wrestling, but I wouldn't say it's fun when I lost to them, right?
Yeah.
But I would say, Kanan Storr, he was from Michigan. He was a top ranked wrestler. I wrestled him at Rutgers, and I lost to him. And essentially, remember, I told you that I beat the number two, three, four, and five
Yeah.
all straight. Essentially, those were all of my losses, right? So that year I lost to all of those guys, and then I beat them all in one day. So like I think that was super fun for me, was like seeing the revenge.
It
So
had to
one
be
of
like
them,
surreal, huh?
man, it's the craziest moment because people live their whole lives to feel that moment, right?
Yeah.
To feel that. And I'd say about,
It's euphoric.
yeah, it's euphoric. I'd say 5% of the people ever feel something like that, right?
Yeah.
And man, time slows down. Like you can almost, I can remember, I can smell and see the moments on the mat. Like, there was a whole shift. There was a whole shift because when you're holding on to things, like you're holding on to your reputation, you're holding on to the ranking, you're holding on to, what people think about you, right? That is what's going to hold you back in the match, in the tournament, in the,
Yeah.
the game, whatever. And the more you can like surrender that feeling, I think that was the biggest thing that happened to me in that moment, was surrendering and being like, yo, whatever happens, happens. And that's how I found myself to the
Yeah.
victory, was being in that moment right there.
Yeah.
In there.
And you used the word a couple of times tonight, flow,
Yeah.
right? What does that mean? People are wondering, what does it mean flow? Flow what? Like, what does that mean to you?
So I think people can trigger flow in their life. And I do a couple different things to basically get into that flow. but Tony Robbins talks about it.
Yeah.
Actually, Russell Brunson, he talks about it. But those are people that are close to me, right? I've got to meet Tony this year and talk to him, which is insanely surreal to me. Um, but essentially, what they do is they talk about these priming rituals, and when you can get into this ritual, this state, he talks about the more that you could change the state that you're in, the more that you can actually, be in control of, every single moment that you have, right? So, when I talk about flow, I'm really talking about flow state. And I'm changing my internal state of being, right? So a lot of the times, what I'll do is I'll have breathing sequences where, I'll get in a squatting position and I'll breathe through my nose. I'll do box breathing, which is
Yeah.
4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. And a lot of, to be honest with you, a lot of things trigger flow. Where whether it's getting up in the morning and sipping a cup of coffee with, and getting into that mind state, a lot of people get triggered in flow in different ways, whether it's sport or business or life. However, I think one of the hardest things is trying to trigger that. How can you get into that state of mind every time, predictably, right? And I think it starts with having a pattern recognition. And Tony talks about this. He talks about, life is really just a sequence of patterns, right?
Yeah.
Everybody gets stuck in patterns in their job, in their health, in their vices, right? Are they consuming every day? Are they doing the wrong things every day, right? They get stuck in these patterns. And I believe that flow and flow state will allow you to disrupt the pattern, right? So a lot of times when people are in depression or they have anxiety or they're just like literally they're choked with nerves, they have to break out of that pattern because it is the state that you're in that really triggers that. So there's a bunch of different things with me. It's like before my wrestling match, I'd always have a double shot of coffee with honey, right? And I'd have a breathing session, and I'd have a meditation session where I sit back on my back and I just will allow thoughts to just race like a highway. I don't try and control them. A lot of my psychology people that I worked with when I was in wrestling was look at your mind like a highway, and your mind might veer off on an exit, right? But it's your job to get back on the highway. So when your
Mhm.
thoughts come in, your emotions come in, yeah, you're gonna have thoughts of you getting pinned, thoughts of you losing the football game, thoughts of you, just like getting totally crushed and hurt, right? Literally bad. You
Yeah.
could have those thoughts, right? But you are not your thoughts. Simple as that. And that's where the art of surrender comes in the book that I read, is he talks about you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts, right? So you are not your thoughts, you're the observer of your thoughts. So when you understand that, then you don't get flustered by when bad emotions come in, right? You're
Yeah.
just like, oh, those were thoughts that came in and out, right? So that's when you learn to control your state.
I gotta get you on the stage with Tony.
Dude, that's the goal.
Is that coming? I mean, I've seen you doing stuff with Russell. That's pretty cool,
Yeah.
right? We're
Yeah.
gonna that's stuff I want to hit on. But before we
Yeah.
get into that, I gotta ask you one question.
Yeah.
Goody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As soon as I say his name, you see the smile on your face. Tell me about the relationship you had with him.
Man, it's such a good relationship with Goody. Yeah.
As soon as I said his name, your face completely changed.
Yeah, he's a great dude, man. Man, I have so much appreciation for him because he stayed with me when things were rough, right? He didn't hand me anything, right? He didn't hand me a spot. He didn't hand me glory. He put the guy against me every single year to make sure that I would beat them. You know what I mean? Even if he thought that I was better than them, he
Hmm.
had to do his job as a coach. So no, he did not hand anything to me, but he walked with me through so many highs and lows, right? He could have gave up on me when I was out doing my own thing, but he didn't. He knew what I was capable of. He saw every time I showed up in practice, how much effort I gave, what type of teammate I was, what type of relationships I had, the type of family that I came through. And he really man was a huge guide of light, right? He allowed me to see past just wrestling, right?
Hmm.
Wrestling's amazing, wrestling's important, but he allowed me to become a better version of myself. And I think that's why the smiling came into place because he was always such a good like such a great coach in my life. Always positive. Even times where there was someone trying to get my own spot, and there was tension between us and the coaches. Right? There was always, um, I don't know, man. He's just a great dude. And I think that's why, I feel the way I feel about him because he's a truly good-hearted man.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think I told you before, I had the privilege to interview him on this show not too long ago, and you can feel the emotional love that comes out of him for not just what he does for a living, but for the impact he makes on the young men in that school, and he lives for that, which and you're a byproduct of it, and here you are, the sign of somebody who's really good at what they do is when he's not around, people talk about him in a good light,
Yeah,
which is what you just did. So, in wrestling, I'm going to kind of put this on you a little bit. Wrestling, it really became your vehicle, Mike, to take you on this journey to where you're at now.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because without wrestling, you might
Mhm.
not be here. You might be, you might still be on that truck,
Yeah.
cruising the country. But wrestling brought you back.
Yeah, I have so much appreciation for wrestling, and there was a lot of times in my career where, even afterwards, I didn't think that it was going to give me what I thought it was going to give me. And I can say this because I'm sitting on the other end in an office with a former wrestler who went and scaled a software company to $100 million in its first 3 years.
Yeah,
Okay. So wrestling did that, right? The relationship that I had with my sport, with wrestling, the amount of love I had for it,
yeah,
right, got me here. Now, not only that, right, I have skill sets and things that,
sure.
obviously provide value, right? And I continue to grow and I'm a very hard worker, but, you know, I will say this too, even for college athletes now, it's like, guys, you got to be building your brand. You got to be
Yeah,
posting online every single day. And I know everyone's saying that, but what does building a brand truly mean? It means like putting your authentic self out there,
yeah,
right? And um like for me, what it did was like it landed me NIL scholarships before things they were even real. I signed a $5,000 contract per semester with a local rental company because I was able to post and have a brand over people that were Olympic bronze medalists, NCAA champions, right? I
yeah,
didn't have that credential, but they chose me because I had a brand and a
yeah,
presence, right? Um, so you know, I have so much appreciation for wrestling because, all the, I remember even being in it, I was like, man, wrestling is just wrestling. And then when you get out in the world, like, it doesn't matter because, and I love my mom to death, right? But she didn't see wrestling as valuable. There was a lot of times where she didn't want me to go to college and wrestle at all. And she, why are you not going in the work world and just going out and getting a job, getting a real job? Because that's what you're gonna, nobody cares that you were a good wrestler. Nobody cares about that, right? But one thing I can say is, man, when you get out of college, right, you build a brand and you do really good as an athlete, right? And you're posting about it and
yeah.
you have a good attitude. People gravitate towards that.
People want to be part of that.
People want to be part of it, right?
Yeah.
Business owners, yeah, they want to be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, look at what we're doing now. I'm watching all this stuff. I'm watching you wrestle on the beach. I'm watching all that, right? It's everywhere. And I'm like, what is he doing out there? And I'm like, I gotta get you on here. And you and I have been talking about this for a while, and just due to our schedules, just hasn't been popped up. But I've been looking forward to this for a long time, knowing because just watching your story grow and develop your brand, I'm like. I want this people got to hear about this growth in this young man. Like you said, you're only out of college a couple of years, and look at what you're doing, and it's impressive to see that a guy who was kind of falling off the way a little bit, right?
Yeah, for
Was
sure.
able to turn that around, put the discipline back in your life, and turn it into something that God knows where this is going to go, but it's only going up, right? And for me, for a guy who's on the East Coast who knows you, it's fun to watch, and I'm almost like, what's he doing next? It's because you never know. It's like tune in next week to see what Mike's doing. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about wrestling's over. But now you're doing the professional wrestling though, right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that is that
Actually,
still happening or no?
oh, I got a big one coming up, big announcement. I haven't even announced it yet. But essentially, yeah, I'm getting on one of the biggest stages of wrestling ever. It's called Real American Freestyle. They got gold medalists, Kyle Dake, all these big names.
Yeah.
And they asked me to wrestle in the event coming up. in a week, which, they have Olympic gold medalists, NCAA champions, multiple time NCAA champions, like
Yeah.
all
Are you
these.
ready?
Um, so I wasn't able to wrestle in this one,
Okay.
but I'm going to be wrestling in November
Okay.
or December, and man, that's going to be exciting. But yeah, it's you know, it's funny. I still wrestle with Russell, right? We
Yeah.
wrestle, once or twice a week, and we keep that in our life because I think it's important. But um, yeah, now I'm not I don't have any pressure, right? I don't have any pressure to do well with wrestling. I'm more focused on the business and stuff, but I do think
Yeah.
it'll help grow my brand, just like you're talking about.
Yeah. It's gonna keep you sharp. Like I'm like, when you're wrestling, because I see the stuff you post. I'm like, when's that happen? Like, where
Yeah,
do I tune in? How do I watch it? Because I
yeah,
can't be the only one saying that, right?
yeah,
Right. So
yeah,
let's talk about your career path. I know your family has an extremely successful pool business down in South Jersey.
yeah,
There's pressure to be part of that, right?
yeah,
You got your dad, you got your brother, and it's expanding and growing. But then you're out west, you're working in, in the ClickFunnels world and building your brand there. Talk about what you're doing, because we mentioned before how you think you can blow your family business up by the
yeah.
work you're doing now from out west, without even having to be, like you said before, you were digging and scratching in the dirt with before. Now you don't have to get dirty, but you can still blow the business up. So talk about how all that's going in your career.
Yeah, so essentially what I found was that the skill sets that I need to take that business from a multi-seven or even eight-figure business, which is, a million, multiple million, or 10 million plus, right? So eight figures, 10, I know you know this, but maybe some of the college kids don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But essentially, I believe that in order for, like me to take that business to, multiple eight figures, which is like 10, like 20 million, whatever, like is is reliant on the skills that I'm learning here.
Yeah.
And it's actually interesting because I don't necessarily know the exact path, but I do know the little steps that I'm taking, and I'm already seeing results. So essentially, this world is the online digital world. How do you
Yep.
make money online? How do you sell things online? And it's not at a baseline. Like this guy has sold, he sold $1 billion worth of products and services. So he's, one of the best in the game at selling online. And there's structure to it. There's ways to sell that other people just don't really understand, like
Hmm.
webinar presentations, selling one to many. Like that's his skill set, right? So I'm learning that.
Hmm.
But essentially, man, um, so essentially what I'm doing right now is I'm building a brand, building brands right now. You know, creating online traffic, digital traffic, right? We're running paid ads. We're doing organic social media. We're doing, SEO. So all the things that make a business good online can be applied to a blue collar business like my family because we made a multi-million dollar business with no paid ads, no organic presence, no marketing at all, right? So I'm in the marketing world.
Yeah.
We're able to do that with no marketing at all. Then we sure as heck can blow that business up, and I already see results. I ran a paid advertisement for Vanbrill pools. We spent $100 on Facebook ads,
$100. That's it.
$100, and we landed $150,000 client. So the return on investment for there is insane. Like, in the coaching world, you hope to see a break even, right? Where you're like, you spend $100 on ads, you hope that you break even on the
Right.
money so that you could sell a coaching course or
Yeah.
something on the back end, right? To make your money.
So what did your dad think of that? He must have been like, holy crap. This is
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's insane. I mean, not only can you run advertisements, like not only can I take the information from the pool company and run local ads and make the business better, but I could also take that same framework of the business and then go sell it nationally or globally to other pool builders, other contractors, right? And that's the plan. That's the like the $100 million play, right? That I would love to get involved in. And something that I'm trying to perfect right now is like, how can I, not how can I build a business that's not stuck in South Jersey, right?
Yeah.
And I want to blow that up for my family. I want to run paid ads, run organic traffic, market, go SEO, do all these things. And, that's what I'm doing right now, essentially. But I think there's a bigger play. to be honest with you. And that's where I'm kind of, I feel a little stuck sometimes, even though there's amazing things happening in my life right now, I still feel unsatisfied. I wake up and sometimes I question if I'm on the right path. And I'm just, sometimes it's frustrating because nobody will give you the path forward. No one's going to sit here and be like, hey, Mike, here's the exact path to $10
Yeah.
million or $1 million. No one's going to do it for you. And I always thought that quote was cliche, right? No one's going to do it for you, but
No one's coming to save you.
no one's coming to save you. I thought it was cliche until you get out into the business world, right?
Yeah.
You're a star athlete, right? You got all these things, right? But no one's calling, right? No one cares that, you know, the only reason why I'm sitting here in the chair today is because I went and found him, right? I'm actively posting online. I'm going and finding opportunities. The reason why I connected with you is I think I followed you, right? Potentially, or either way, my energy is
One way or
portraying.
the other. You know what brought you to Russell and you to me is sports.
Yeah,
Wrestling. If you weren't a wrestler at Rutgers, I wouldn't be knowing you right now.
yeah,
If you weren't a wrestler, there's a good chance Russell might have said, I'm not talking to this kid. You
yeah,
know, and if you weren't a wrestler, you wouldn't have fought through the pain of getting your life back together to get you to where you're at today. Because I look at that as you have an internal growth mindset that never turns off. More, right? You don't have the fixed mindset, well, okay, this is good, I'm done. It's your
yeah,
mind just doesn't turn off, and it's you're constantly thinking about what's next. And that's how these guys propel themselves into the next level, the next level. Because if you settle, and you say, okay, now I'm fixed, I'm not going to get to that next step.
yeah,
So what you're going through, like you're like, hey, am I satisfied? What I mean, you're never going to be satisfied. You're going to be happy. You're going to reach multiple levels of happiness, but you're always going to want to grow more because that's just who you are.
yeah. Yeah, and it's like a balance of like I think that's where like life choices will come into play too, because I'm a family guy. I'm a relation I got a fiance, love her, and we're gonna, hopefully build an amazing family together and stuff like that. And those are all the things that I want to take into consideration because you only have so many years to
Yeah,
build the life that you want. And that's what I'm realizing how quickly life goes and
trust me,
you
I
know,
know. I know.
how long it takes to actually build something great too, right? It's
Yeah,
like how long does it actually take to build a legit business that, is going to, be something that you can actually take in. So my point is like, yeah, even though like, I wake up every day like unsatisfied, even though, some people would dream to be in a position like this, right? I'm like,
yeah,
man, like where do I go next? I feel lost. I feel like I don't know what I want to, like I need to continue to push. I need to find out, and like I think those are the things that are uncovering the skill sets
yeah.
and the info that I need to continue to move to the next level.
What
So
I'm going to ask you a crazy question, but I mean, you're working for one of the most successful guys in the world, right? What does he tell you?
yeah. Um, it's funny, man. I think everybody is so you need to be locked in on your own like journey.
Yeah,
So, I think a big thing for him is, taking action, right? Like, if you were to give me advice right now, he would say, go ahead and, run a webinar and, start selling, create a coaching product and start selling. Like I could have probably been selling about, a year ago. And these are contemplations, and things in my head that I'm dealing with, right? And it's also like being in the moment to learn from him and grow and not feel like I'm stepping on someone else,
yeah.
So there's two things there. But yeah, he would tell me, you know,
I mean, I can, as you're sitting here talking about seminars, webinars, selling, I mean, you can't sell wrestling coaching, physical wrestling coaching through the computer, but you can sell mental coaching through the computer.
yeah,
And it sounds to me, Mike, like that's what's going on in your head is you're like the mental coach. You got the diet thing going on. Like you say, there's nobody better in the industry than you at the diet. Well, you know how many people might be listening to this? Like, how does he do that? And they'll
yeah,
pay for that. And then you got, okay, his mental side has got to be incredibly like a steel trap, of discipline. Well, how do you get there? There's two things right there. You package those two things together, there's your program.
yeah.
Let's partner
Yeah.
up on that one.
Yeah, dude, 100%. I'm willing to 100% do that. I think it's more of, yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the answer has been sitting there in front of me, and that's a good lesson for everybody who's probably listening to this, is that a lot of the times the answer or the opportunity or the thing that you're looking for, it could potentially be walking in front of you or sitting in front of you and you're walking over it.
Yeah,
Um, you know, um,
because
you
you
know,
second guess it.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Well, let me ask you this. We're talking about all kinds of cool stuff, right?
yeah,
And you're a young guy. How old are you now?
27.
27. My God. You're a young guy. What does the future look like for you? Like, what's next?
Um,
Outside of getting married, what's next?
yeah, you know, yeah, that's a great question. Um, one of the most exciting things that I'm excited about right now that I'm working on is going all in on AI. So essentially what I'm doing right now is I'm finding ways for business owners to leverage AI automation, AI content, AI, like everything. And that's what I've been diving down a rabbit hole for the past year. And that's honestly probably a big reason of why I haven't started the mental training and diet training is, yeah, sure, I want to be like a Tony Robbins and do that. But parts of me is like, man, I love AI and how much of a difference it can make in business owners. Like no joke, like not even a week ago, I sold a consulting package, AI consulting, $1,500 for 1 hour of my time. So there's a lot of money in AI consulting and AI,
Yeah.
arbitrage and AI everything, right? And that's what I'm doing right now for Russell is I'm using AI to mass create content, mass create paid advertisements, mass create like written content, and it dramatically increases the visibility of a business if you can do that. Because I mean, like he pays me to do that, and I'm sure if it's worth it for someone like of that stature, it will 100% be worth it for someone who's not leveraging all of these things, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think what's next, it has something to do with AI, mental training and high performance training, and really just coaching. I think that's in my future. And if it doesn't go that way, I do believe that there is something very profound to happen with the family business and using the family pool business to leverage that, whether it's just growing that business in general, the construction, or taking that and creating a licensing program for that business and then selling it nationwide. So I believe that could be a huge. I mean, I ran that idea through Russell, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that's $1 billion company," and I'm like, "What? Like what?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." He goes, "You're teaching, pool builders, contractors, anybody in blue collar space. They have no idea about digital landscape.
Yeah.
You're running, the digital side of probably one of the greatest online entrepreneurs in the game, right? Marketing, one of the biggest marketers in the world,
Yeah.
and so take that skill set and apply it to an industry that really doesn't have any of that." And
Yeah.
I think the possibilities are endless. So I think something along those lines. But right now I'm truly enjoying where I'm at right now. And I'm trying to, learn as much as I can and, be of value to a business owner and stay consistent, stay
Yeah.
loyal, continue to give. And I believe that either partnerships or, just, bigger opportunities where we could work together will come into play.
That's awesome. So I mean, you got that growth mindset. It just doesn't turn off.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're not satisfied. It's that, when people hear, "Hey, I'm not satisfied," that sometimes they think, "Oh, you don't appreciate what you have." You just want to grow.
Yeah.
You could be satisfied for a little bit, but it's okay to be unsatisfied with tomorrow. I want tomorrow to be better than today. What's wrong
Yeah.
with that, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this about Rutgers wrestling. It's unfortunate, but it's over, right? How are you hoping to be remembered over there? Because you are remembered, your brother, you're part of a massive program. You guys were really good. How do you want to be remembered when somebody says Mike Vanbrill, Rutgers wrestling? What do you want them to think?
Yeah. So I'm trying to like bring it up and put it into one sentence. However, I don't know if it can come out that way. I
We
think
could take two senses.
okay, so one is you know the most loyal. So
Mm,
I posted this the other day essentially, and the reel did really well. So essentially, what I said was in a time and era of transfer hopping, people just leaving schools
yeah.
for an extra 5 grand or 10 grand, or just leaving because they're not getting the starting spot. I was the guy that stayed there for 6 years, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of me not starting, me not, whatever the scenario, getting a better offer from another,
Yep.
whatever, I was Rutgers dot till the day I died, and I gave everything to that school that I could potentially that I could. I showed up. Um, you know, uh, I think that's one of the biggest things. I could say, oh, I was the hardest worker in the room, and even though I believe that, I think one of the biggest thing was, the loyalty and the relationships that I kept. Because a lot of people, even though they have the accolades and they worked hard or whatever, a lot of them don't have any relationship with the coaches, or they have bad relationships with the coaches because they went and
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? So my relationship with them is amazing. So I think loyalty, and true true Rutgers guy. Someone who just bled Rutgers, stayed to the very
Yeah.
end, and gave everything that I could potentially give to that school. I mean, that was it, right? I think that's something that I want to be remembered for.
I mean, loyalty is a very difficult word to hear these days from the college athletes because
Yeah,
it's like you said, it's here today, transfer tomorrow.
yeah,
If the coach doesn't like you or doesn't give you the right look, I'm out.
yeah,
And my opinion on coaches want to put the guys on the mat that are going to win, to help the team win. They might not even like you, but they're going to put you on there because you're going to win. And our job as an athlete is to make the team and the coach win and look better. That's it. And if we
yeah,
can't do that, we can't expect to play, or wrestle, right?
yeah.
So yeah, loyalty is huge. That's awesome. Well, Mike, we covered a lot of stuff tonight, right? Is there anything we haven't hit on you want to make sure we touch on before we wrap it up?
Um, Yeah, I think I hinted on a couple of these things just throughout the conversation, but it's essentially like, for anyone watching this, whether you're, a college athlete, a high school athlete, or retired, athlete in general that's in the business world who lost their edge, right? Um, you know, try and learn the art of surrendering. I battle with it every single day. I love, sometimes I love to feel that I'm fully in control of my life and everything that's happening. But there's a lot of, things in my life that I look back on that happened that I'm like, wow, like, even though I felt like I had full control, there was a lot of things out of my control that either fell into place or didn't fall into place. So the art of surrendering, how do you, just like surrender to your life in a way that no, you are fully in control of your life, right? You will what Russell or what Tony said, he goes, I believe that life happens for us, not to us, but it's our job to figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good place to end.
Be resor yeah, I've heard Tony say be resourceful with the resources,
Hmm.
right? And yeah, it's our job to figure so many people have things at their fingertips. You got to figure out how to be resourceful with those things, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I
So
mean,
Mike, man, I am so glad that we got on the show together today. Your story's incredible, and I don't want to wish your life away, but I can't wait to see what's next. And it's fun to watch. It's definitely fun to watch, but I'm excited about your next wrestling match. So when are we going to be promoting that? So we know.
it comes up in we're shooting for November, December, and that should be game time.
All right. Well, make sure you let us know, and I'm definitely going to be tuning in to watch.
Awesome. Yes,
So
sir. I appreciate the time, Jeff.
yeah, thanks for being on, and we'll see you on the mat.
Let's
And
go.
how I end all my shows, I always say, stay strong.
Stay strong.